Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Bozzelli's TV, episode 5. You guys are getting so spoiled thanks to Holly Rocco Feraci, who's now becoming a perennial special guest on our show. We couldn't have got this far without Holly. In episode 4, she introduced us to a Virginia winemaker, and that was amazing. We didn't know how we would top that, but we are topping it today. We have Carly Maher of Trinchero Family Estates, their heritage collection, their premium division. Trinchero is very close to my heart and Holly's heart. I have a lot of personal Trinchero stories. Holly has a lot of personal Trinchero stories. When we first got into the wine business, what is interesting, so we own a small chain of pizza shops. Oh, I forgot to mention my co-host Daniel Sexton, the beer guy. Maybe that's because he's a beer guy, not a wine guy.
Did you introduce yourself?
Pardon?
I don't think you introduced yourself either.
We're so excited about Trinchero today.
I'm just so excited. I forgot to intro. I'm Mike Bozzelli, co-host of Bozzelli's TV. That's my co-host. Daniel Sexton, the beer guy. We are so excited. We forgot to introduce ourselves today. We have Carly Maher right there in the center of Trinchero Family Estates Heritage Collection, the premium, the good stuff. But they have one hell of a American success story. As I was saying, Trinchero is very personal to me. Trinchero, today is not going to be a regular virtual tasting. This is going to be an examination into an American success story. I know that you work for the Heritage Collection, Carly, but you guys own everything. I mean, I'm going to give the Cliff Notes version of the Trinchero story. 2 Italian guys moved from New York to California. They stumble upon a abandoned winery in Mount St. Helena in St. Helena.
It's important. This was 1947.
This is 1947.
Napa was not a thing,
There was no Napa. Napa was not a thing. Thank you. 1947.
It was there, but it was a lot of farmland. Okay, it isn't Disneyland Napa that we see today.
It was just dirt. It was just dirt. Yeah. These 2 Italian guys get lost. They find this winery, abandoned winery that was shuttered during Prohibition. They decide to buy it. The name of this winery is pretty famous. Today it is, actually. The name of this winery is Sutter Home. So their gamble culminated into what we have today, Sutter Home, one of the best-selling wines in America, probably arguably maybe the most famous wine in America. Their most famous SKU or product was the White Zinfandel, which they made in an accident, and they decided to bottle it, and then it took off. And from Sutter Home, from that abandoned winery, we have Neyers, we have Taken, we have Joel Gott, we have Montevina, we have Naples Cellars, we have Charles & Charles, we have Folia Dew. What else do we have? What am I missing, Carly? We have Terra Dior, we have Sycamore Lane.
Iron and Sand, Trinchero Napa Valley, San Polo Brunello, Allende from Spain. The other key is, this was not an overnight success. The reason so Sutter Home existed pre-Prohibition, they couldn't afford to paint over the Sutter Home signage. So
they didn't have enough money for paint.
They didn't have money for paint.
Wow.
They lived on a dirt floor. Speaking of dirt, in the El Bonita Motel, they almost went bankrupt. And part of the reason that they had to bottle that not so dry white Zinfandel was they didn't have a choice. They had to sell from the winery. So it turns out people liked it okay. But yeah, this is several from 1947 until, Bob invented white Zinfandel. That was 2 decades. And then, so they almost went bankrupt. So it's definitely not just an overnight success story. And I want to make sure people understand that.
Of course, they paid their dues. And thanks for elaborating on that's a very interesting data point, because everything I've read is like it was an accident and they just decided to bottle it. But I get it. They were financially strapped and they couldn't just discard all this product. They had to sell it to keep the lights on or to buy a can of paint. And that's
We're also very, sensible Italians, right? Like, don't waste anything. If there's
That's
something
awesome.
like this, what do we do with it?
Mary Trinchero, the matriarch, even after the success of, White Zinfandel, she would come and buy wine from Sutter Home. She would insist on paying for it. She would never accept a free bottle of wine.
That
Isn't
is
that
awesome.
amazing?
Yeah,
That is awesome. That says a lot because Daniel never pays for anything at our shop. But
Hey man, perks of the job.
perks of the job. But yeah, we are so excited to have Carly here today, and we are going to be tasting 4 wines. I think one is a Sauvignon Blanc, potentially category killer that she has. She has a couple shards, one from Russian
One
River,
Chard, one Pinot, and one Cab. So we're giving a
Carneros.
little snapshot of some of our little gems on the domestic side of the Heritage Collection portfolio.
Awesome. But before we start tasting, if you don't mind, Carly, I always ask our guest, and thank you again to Holly Rocco Feraci from Republic National, who has been instrumental in helping us launch this new YouTube channel for us. She's helped set up a number of VIPs for us. But I always ask Carly, how did you get started in the wine game, and how did you end up with an illustrious house like Trinchero?
Great question. So I actually, wine is sort of a second career for me. I went to NYU Tisch School of the Arts and got a BFA in theater. Went to London, studied Shakespeare at RADA, did experimental theater in Europe for a summer. I thought I was going to be a starving actress in New York. I graduated just before the recession, and I was doing the job that, pays the bills while you're a starving actress, and that was at Del Frisco's in New York. They had the largest wine cellar. And every day before, at our pre-shift meeting, we would taste wines, and I just loved it. And that was the first inclination I had that this was a real gig. I was like, wait, you can sell wine for a living? Like, this is a thing? So basically, like less than a year after graduating NYU, my poor parents, just put me through this. And I was like, I'm going to sell hooch for a living. But hey, it worked out okay. So I started my career on the distribution side in LA, moved to LA, worked for a small distributor. I don't know if you've heard of them, Southern Wine and Spirits. I don't know. Waiting for them to get. So that's where I started my career, then switched over to the supplier side in 2013. So I've been covering the Mid-Atlantic territory. I'm actually an Alexandria native, so back home as of 2013. So I've been with the Trinchero family since December 31st, 2018. I got a call from a recruiter, and I couldn't say no. It's a really special company. There's nothing quite like it. They are family owned. And they really do, even though they are large, it's still very much a family. Carlo Trinchero called me after surgery. It's really, it's a special company, and it really does feel like you're part of the family.
So I just want to follow up. The move to LA, was that related to wanting to be an actor, or?
Yeah, that's sort of
Okay.
what. So I graduated early, so December 2007. And then, of course, the recession, I was waiting on Lehman Brothers, just to give you a little timeline, right? So that all fell apart as I was living in New York, and I was just like, you know what? It's time for a change. So moved to LA, got some sunshine, quickly realized I had zero desire to be in the industry. I mean, everything you think is true, but I was just like, I just can't do this. So I had started to go up to Santa Barbara a lot and befriended some winemakers and just really fell in love with the industry. So I started on the distribution side, in 2010.
In 2010, awesome. Okay.
It's been a little over a decade now, yeah.
And Southern was your first company that you worked at?
Yes, and I started as what is called a chain territory manager, which is basically like the mailroom equivalent of the distribution side. I was waking up at 3:30 in the morning, every morning, and I would be at my first account by 5 a.m.
Oh, those convenience store accounts?
Grocery stores, yes.
Okay.
So yeah, it was, put my time in, and then made it to, got promoted to an on-premise position in Hollywood, then a larger territory on the west side, and then moved to the East Coast September 2013 and accepted a role with Neyers.
Do you remember your
Sounds like
best?
Really good, you're working, and
I
we're
mean-
rewarded for it.
I did my time. There are always people that, right? Like I also feel very, very lucky, right? Yes, I did work hard. Yes, I did not sleep a lot for at first. It was a humbling experience, but I'm really grateful to have I've had experience now, on the restaurant side, grocery stores. I did national accounts for 3 years with the wine group. So it was really important to me to learn as many facets of the industry as I could. Yeah.
And what is interesting is that a lot of the success that Trinchero has experienced, along with Franzia, Gallo, and Mondavi, came from grocery store shelves. Is that a fair
Bob
statement?
Trinchero actually received an award for putting more wine on America's dinner table than anyone else.
Wow.
Because that's the thing is we do, Carlo talks about this a lot, how, we're on the East Coast. We often think of the country in terms of the extremities, but there's a whole heartland in between us, and they love white Zinfandel, among other things. But that's really, Bob made wine accessible for a lot of people in America.
Yeah, I think so. And then it gets, but now you have the Heritage Collection, which is, I guess the Trinchero family's way of kind of expressing what.
Well, just to give you some context, it's almost a coming home, because I know that everyone thinks of Sutter Home now as grocery store wine, but you have to understand that before I call it the white Zincident.
Nice.
I'm waiting for that to take off. Before the white Zincident, they were doing single vineyard bottlings of Amador Zinfandel. They had a fine wine program at Sutter Home, and so this isn't new. This is a coming home. The Heritage Collection is really finding our roots back to fine wine. And this is Carlo Trinchero's legacy. This is his baby. He is a big fine wine guy and is heavily involved with selecting our partners, because this is his legacy, right? He's third generation. So I know I'm always like, I'm representing Carlo. Like, I have him doing okay.
But the economics of this business are not as easy as the grocery store.
No, I like to call us the trophy wives of the Trinchero portfolio, right? Like, do we add a lot to the bottom line? Maybe not. Like some, right? But we sure do add a little cachet, don't we?
Well, you look great. You guys look great doing it. That's all that matters. So.
But yes, we're well on our way. I mean, this has been a really phenomenal year for us, surprisingly, right? Like people are drinking a lot of wine.
Yes.
Turns out this past year and a half.
So I knew staying at home for a year, people would drink more.
And they're buying it online too. It's my understanding that 53% of consumers will not go to a wine shop to buy wine anymore. They will buy online as a result of the pandemic.
The economics of e-commerce and online wine buying are huge. I mean, this is a big trend, and so. And for those of you who either haven't experienced it or want a new experience, you can go to casewinelife.com and check it out.
Thank you so much, Holly. Yeah,
I love that.
Holly.
I did a shameless plug that I didn't have to do. So thank you.
Well, and to add to it, like, one of the reasons why obviously our website, but just online shopping in general is I used to be the guy that walked into, a wine store and I was like, oh, it looks like this aisle has like some reds, and like it was very intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
And like I always felt like, oh, I can't buy like the $9.99 bottle because then they're gonna be like I'm drinking something cheap. But like I really didn't know. So like I love going online because I can actually take the time that I want to like kind of research and not feel like intimidated or like rushed. I can buy what I want to buy and I don't have to drive 5 minutes to get it.
We're seeing those trends even in retail, so it totally makes sense to me that everyone's gravitating toward online shopping for wine, because we're seeing that people aren't really just showing up to wine shops and walking the aisles and being like, what do I feel like? They're walking in and they know exactly what they want. They're going straight there and then they're leaving. So having an online outlet further streamlines that process, and they want what they want and they're gonna pick it out right there and then.
And then on your side, what is the average price point in the Heritage Collection? Is there like a aggregate number
I
you
would
work with?
say, I mean, well over. We have everything from $17.99 retail all the way up until, gosh, our single vineyard Brunellos. That's $350 retail bottles. Same
I'm
for-
coming to that tasting.
Yeah, we'll have to set up.
We'll set up
We'll
a
set up
sample.
We'll set up a San Polo single vineyard pre-sale tasting. It sounds like.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
I think
Thank
so.
you. Oh, pre-sale tasting. Oh, there's a catch. Done. Sold. We're all in sales.
Brunello, that is
Yeah.
your that
Oh
is
my
the
gosh.
one.
We'll have to do a San Polo, virtual tasting because it's female owned, family owned. You'll see. So the ethos behind heritage. Can I talk about the ethos of heritage?
Yeah.
Of
Collection?
course, of course.
Okay. So I mentioned this is Carlo's legacy. This is very curated by him, and he only wants to partner with like-minded families. So family owned, a sense of place. Carlo also likes to call it the X factor, right? What do all these wines have in common? They've got a story. They've got something, a certain je ne sais quoi about them. But only partnering with families that are where it's family owned, where they take care of the land. There's a sense of place, and it's sort of a smaller production boutique winemaking.
Biodynamic, organic, is that important? Or
Yeah, very much so.
And San Paulo.
Yeah,
is
San
very
Paulo is
much-
certified organic and also Casa Clima certified, which is basically like lead certification to another level.
okay, because we always hear about like this bottle may be made from organic grapes, but it doesn't have the certification because there's so many regulatory hoops to get it, so they don't. But yours is certified.
San Paulo is certified organic. Yeah.
And many of the Trinchero wines they're sustainably farmed or farmed with organic grapes, but Trinchero very much invests in sustainability and making sure that the land that they're farming is left for future generations better than they found it, and that's very important to them. And they have a lot of projects related to that too.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can I don't want to delay this tasting. I'm so
I
excited.
like,
I regret that I can't be there.
I'm getting the shakes. It's after 10 a.m. I'm getting the
Yeah.
shakes.
This is breakfast wine time, as you said, Carly. I'm not going to delay this. So wherever you want to start, let's do this.
Mason. Yeah. So let's go ahead and start with. Are we gonna use? Let's use the one.
Oh, yo.
We'll save.
There we go. I'm learning even more than you thought I would, Mike.
We'll save the big boy glasses for ribs. All right. So the first wine that we are tasting this morning. I was like, we might get a jump cut, Lordy. Have a very productive morning. So this is Mason Sauvignon Blanc. Randy Mason is sort of considered the godfather of Sauvignon Blanc in Napa Valley, whereas many of his peers have put their focus on Cabernet Sauvignon because it's very profitable. He's really stayed consistent. He's had over 45 vintages now of working with Sauvignon Blanc. This is actually a single vineyard Sauvignon Blanc. It is from a vineyard called Yount Mill, just north of the town of Yountville. This is all Sauvignon Blanc Clone 1. So if you're used to Musqué, Sauvignon Musqué, which is a clone, a very aromatic floral clone, this is not it. It is a traditional Sauvignon Blanc Clone 1, very clean varietal expression, a little bit more similar to the Loire in terms of its flavor profile. Certified organic, this vineyard. And Randy is only doing canopy management on the eastern side of the trellising. So it's really only getting exposed to full morning sun. And what that does is that creates a nice blend of, some more golden berries, some that are a little bit more lean, and air toward green. So you got a really complex mouthfeel. And there's a little bit of lees contact as well.
Okay, awesome. And then for our viewership, if you don't mind, Carly, elaborating more on Clone 1, cloning wine.
Yeah. So clones are basically if you find, I'm sorry, I'm looking for that'll get edited out. Please don't. So clones are basically what happens is it can happen naturally, right? There can be a mutation, but they all offer something different. So Pinot is a really good example of different types of clones, right? You've got Dijon clones and there's 777. Each one offers something different. So, this has Christmas spice. This one has thicker skins, right? So, and you basically plant clones to a vineyard that you specifically, if what you really like is, tobacco, then you plant the clone that has the more tobacco expression that it's known. It's really sort of like a spice box of, I don't know. Holly, do you want to elaborate on that?
So different clones are offering something different to the blend.
Yeah.
And so and so there are clones from, with Pinot Noir. I mean, you've got your Burgundian clones, or the Dijon clone is certainly very famous, which often has some nice, spice profile to it. Some in Oregon, right? So in Oregon, it's very cold, and Oregon is a new wine industry, relatively speaking, compared to other wine industries. And so initially, when they planted, clones like Dijon or other clones that are good for cooler weather, but with, for example, like climate change and the warming of the climate, they're having to play around with new clones because of ripening times and things like that. And so this is something that's changing, and so clonal selections will always change based on whether it's climatic factors or
some are resistant to certain pests and mildew, etc.
So there's a lot of things that go into
trial and error
selection.
is part of it. But I know for this particular, clone 1 was very intentional. We're not looking for that big stone fruit, floral, honeysuckle. That's great, right? And our Ziada Sauvignon Blanc is 50% Sauvignon Muscat. So but for this particular wine, it's been Yacht Mill from day one. It's been Clone 1, and it really is sort of, if you think, it's more citrus, mineral driven, crisp, sort of a clean. I always think of it as almost a little bit more linear than Muscat, which is very aromatic and floral.
And is this the flagship of the Mason Cellars, I guess, line?
Yep, Mason, we have the single vineyard Sauvignon Blanc. We have a Mason Cabernet Sauvignon, which is coming from the Palissa vineyard. And we are about to launch this fall our first ever Chardonnay. So
nice.
Okay.
Stay tuned for Mason Chardonnay down the road.
Okay, we need to book you for the Chardonnay tasting then. Okay, cool.
Oh, hey, don't threaten me with a good time.
Okay,
a Cougar juice tasting, sign me up.
let's do it. Let's do it. And so
Hashtag Cougar juice.
Oh my gosh.
I'm guessing
That's my favorite word that I learned today.
How-
I've never heard that.
Stick
Yes.
with me,
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Cougar juice.
how did I miss this tasting, Daniel?
I don't know. How did you?
How am I not there?
I'm never getting invited back to Bozzelli's TV ever again. This was fun. Thank you guys so much for having me. This has been great.
speaking of Cougar juice, we've got
We
some
do
next.
have some classy Cougar juice.
Yes.
I'm speechless, guys. So- I know Dan is.
You want ratings, kids? You want ratings? We're here to give
We
you
want
ratings.
views. We want views because all they want is California cabs. But no, we
Now
have
we can have a hashtag Cougar Juice under this YouTube video.
Cougar
okay?
Juice.
Let me know how your viewership does.
But
Let me know how that goes.
is that a euphemism for good Sauvignon Blanc Cougar Juice?
No,
Yes.
sorry, that's Chardonnay. No, Sauvignon Blanc. What are we gonna call that? Puma juice? I don't know. As a civilian, I prefer Sauvignon. As a civilian, right, Carly? As an individual, Sauvignon Blanc is probably my favorite white varietal.
Okay.
Chardonnay was something I thought for years that I didn't like, and it turns out I just don't like bad Chardonnay. It turns out good Chardonnay, well-made Chardonnay, is delightful. So I used to be ABC, anything but Chardonnay, but Cougar Juice is, I think I might have learned that in my days waiting tables. It's what we describe as like very full malolactic oaked Chardonnay.
Which which you don't like.
Which, if it's done well, it turns out I do like it. I like expensive Chardonnay. It turns
The,
out.
the buttery side.
It's a term that comes from the 1980s, where back in the day, sort of these very oaky, buttery put a stick of butter on a wood plank and put a little apple and pear in there, and here's your Chardonnay. But this style was very in the 1980s, and it's what people were drinking. And so the term cougar juice kind of comes from that era.
I love that we're getting an academic breakdown of the etymology of cougar juice right now.
Right.
Full service.
So it was people of the day who enjoyed that, and so anyway, so of course younger generations were coming up and exploring other varietals, and so it kind of got a derogatory sort of name because people were starting to look at other Chardonnays, and that's where the sort of ABC, anything but Chardonnay, comes in, is people were like, oh, well, if that's what Chardonnay is, I don't want it, because they didn't like that style. But there's so much more to Chardonnay. There's unoaked styles that are crisp and clean and lean. You can think about Chablis, or the Neyers 304 Chardonnay, another style that Bruce Neyers does, that is stainless, all stainless. And then, you can run the gamut, again, to the sort of big, heavy, oaky, buttery, and every style in between. So when people say, oh, I don't like Chardonnay or anything but Chardonnay, my sort of response is, you just haven't found the Chardonnay that you're going to like, because there
also,
is
do you like champagne? Because I'm pretty sure you like Chardonnay.
Yeah, because Chardonnay is
key varietal in that region.
Of course.
Exactly.
Of course.
But yeah, so this is, the key is if a wine is in balance, that's really, what I'm looking for, what many consumers are looking for. So here, Bruce Neyers is just a fascinating human. He's actually from Wilmington, Delaware originally. He and his wife Barbara were elementary school sweethearts, and they're still together. They went to University of Delaware. He was actually a chemist and got into wine when he was stationed in the Army. One of his higher ups sort of took him under his wing, introduced him to some really nice French wine, and from there he started working in Berkeley at a wine shop. He worked for Maya Kamas, Joseph Phelps. He's probably most well known for the 25 plus years he worked as the national sales manager for Kermit Lynch, which is arguably the best French importer in the game. So he has some killer relationships in France, and it's really his whole ethos with the family winery that he and his wife founded in the late 80s, Neyers Vineyard, is basically French-style winemaking done in California. So Holly did mention that they have a 304 Chardonnay, which is their sort of nod to Levantero Chablis. And then the Carneros District Chardonnay, which we're drinking here, would be his nod to Rouleau Merceau. He worked really closely with Rouleau. So talking about clones, right? Bruce does not work with clones. He only works with heirloom selection. So two parents, and the heirloom he prefers to work with for Chardonnay is called Shot Wente. It's sort of a mutant, but it creates these really tiny berries. And with those tiny berries, that skin to juice ratio gives you a very viscous wine, naturally. This is barrel fermented, but only 25% new. And Helen Turley actually consulted with them for this wine for the first vintage, and introduced Bruce to the concept of double wild. So native yeast fermentation and letting fermentation start on its own. So even though this is a richer expression of Chardonnay, this is coming from very cool climate vineyards, that gorgeous Shot Wente, and not heavy-handed with the oak, and letting mallow happen on its own, letting fermentation happen on its own. Bruce, all of his wines are unfined, unfiltered for nearly all of his wines, and native yeast for all of them.
And Barbara's heavily involved in the business, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because
she is, and she also she started her life her adult life as a teacher, but worked at a little restaurant called Chez Panisse for about 20 years, and worked her way up to cooking there, but also being a manager there. So she's quite the chef. And during COVID, she was, if you're not on Bruce's mailing list, by the way, it's phenomenal. His storytelling is unreal. But they've been including Barbara's recipes throughout quarantine. So I compiled a bunch and created recipe cards to give out during COVID. So we have those if anyone's interested.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a pretty cool thing with Barbara being involved and then Bruce's storytelling, because the emails that he sends out, it's always a cool story, something related to his interests, or maybe a comparison between a French wine and his wine, and then Barbara saying, oh well, let me make this to go with it, and then talking about how they went together. And it is pretty fascinating, but and then they also do a cheese master class, which is really cool.
So I just actually did that a couple weeks ago for Nashville Food and Wine. Bruce and I tag teamed. I covered the cheese pairing part. I have a cheese problem, so this was a real hardship for me. But there are some surprising wine and cheese pairings. For example, a Roquefort style local Tennessee cheese with Left Bank Red, which is our Bordeaux style 50% Merlot, 50% Cab. You wouldn't think it works. It works beautifully. Wow. So yeah, cheese and wine pairing is also a great program that we're doing with Neyers Vineyards.
Yeah, I was excited to see one of my favorite cheeses, which is the Cowgirl Creamery Mount Tam, with the Neyers Sage Canyon Red, which is sort of a Rhone style red that Bruce makes in, nice medium-bodied, good fruit that is gonna pair really well, because the Mount Tam has kind of one of those like brie-like type rinds to it, and so that can be bitter, and so you got to be careful. Like I always thought maybe a Chardonnay like this would go, and it goes with the creamier part of the cheese, but when you have the rind with it, it changes it a little bit too much. So the fruity red is kind of a good option for that, and I never realized that. So
it's
that was
really
cool.
a fascinating experience.
This is very fascinating. I appreciate every nuance and intricacy, ladies. But let's for
red, right?
let's go to, before we go to the reds, Carly. I just want to get a tasting note or two from Daniel, because
It's like very like rich, and I agree. It is very rich, and I definitely, but not in like the buttery, aerobics from the '80s mom kind of way. Like it's what I want in a Chardonnay, not necessarily what I always get in a Chardonnay. Because I would definitely fall into I'm probably not reaching for a bottle of Chardonnay if I'm getting a white wine.
And
so.
the yeast stirring that occurs, the batonnage, really creates what Bruce calls, it's known as noisette, that sort of hazelnut quality. So there's a nuttiness that's present as well.
Yeah, and it's actually, honestly, both of the wines that we've had so far, they're very like clean. And I don't know if that comes from just like kind of how natural his process is, but it's very, very clean. The finish is very good, a little bit of minerality, but...
And this will age a little bit.
Yeah.
If you got a bottle of this and happened to forget about it in your fridge for, 2 years or something.
People actually allow that to happen?
I guess. I mean, I'm not sure I understand it or know about that experience, but I'm just saying. But you would get a little bit more of that noisette coming out, and it's beautiful with this wine. I'm a fan of Bruce Neyers. When I first met him, I completely fangirled out. It was ridiculous. I had him signing bottles. My family loves Neyers. We've been a Neyers family. I'm a Neyers girl. So this is one of those experiences for me. I absolutely just love his wines. So anyway, sorry.
No worries. And then even in our transition, we're going to give a nod to Bruce, because Bruce taught me. You'd think we're going to Pinot Noir next, wouldn't you? But
yes.
we're not.
Where are you going?
We're going to Cab first, and here's why. Bruce taught me this. Pinot Noir has more esters than any other red wine, and those esters, those flavor compounds, completely coat your tongue. So whatever you have after that is going to taste like a donut wine. It's going to completely destroy the mid palate. And that is very present with Bordeaux wines. So Cabernet has fewer esters. So what we're going to do is we're going to taste, even though this is a heavier wine, technically with its weight and its alcohol content, really for us to get the best experience, we're going to taste this next and then end with the Pinot Noir.
And this is Carlo Trinchero's baby, Iron and Sand, right?
Yeah. So this is only the second vintage we've ever made this. So this is our Paso Cab. Iron and Sand is a nod to Iron Spring and Sand Spring, which are two of the natural hot springs in the area that made Paso a tourist destination in the late 1800s. Paso, I know we think of as this new up-and-coming wine region. There's actually been grapes there since 1790 something because of the presence of the church. So it's just a little fun fact. But yeah, it really has exploded in the last decade or so as Napa Cabernet continues to price itself out of the market for many people. And this is coming from two sustainable vineyards in very different areas within Paso. So one is coming from the San Miguel district, which is north of the town of Paso, almost to San Luis Obispo. And then El Pomar district is south of the town of Paso. So you've got a nice variety, it's still got some nice ocean influence. It maintains its acidity. The other thing that's unique about this Paso Cab is we're using predominantly neutral oak. So there is some American oak, but it's 100% neutral, and French oak as well. And do you want me to geek out on neutral oak, just in case?
Wait, I want you to geek out on all oak. Do you use any Hungarian oak?
Not on this, but we will talk about Hungarian oak on Bravian because Derek and Hungarian oak are BFFs.
Gotcha. Okay, there you go. Okay, so let's talk neutral oak.
Yeah, so I throw out the term neutral oak in tastings, and sometimes we can assume that everyone knows what that means, but neutral oak is a barrel that has already been used in wine production for at least one harvest, maybe two, sometimes three. And I like to use the sticker analogy. So the first time you take a sticker and you put it on your shirt, it sticks very well, right? So if you were to pull it off and then stick it back on, it still sticks, but a little less so. That third time, even less so. It might barely stick. Same thing with oak. That first time a barrel's used, it really imparts a lot of oak influence and flavor. The next time, if it's already gone through one harvest, a little bit less so, what it's doing is it's oxygenating the wine, it's adding complexity, it's doing all the amazing things that oak does to wine without that really intense oak influence. So the fruit, we really want the fruit and the terroir of Paso to shine through because this is a unique region. It is a much more fruit forward style of Cabernet Sauvignon than some other regions.
And would you I've had this thanks to Holly, and I think I was on a big Zoom call with Carlo Trinchero when he was introducing this, I guess the second vintage. Would you decant this, Carly?
You actually don't need to. I mean, you're welcome to if you want to feel fancy, but we really made this wine so that it could be popped and enjoyed right away. It's, a great cocktail cab. So even though it does have enough to stand up to a phenomenal ribeye, it's easy drinking enough that you could just pop this open and just enjoy a glass of wine over happy hour or just in front of the fire or a fire pit. It doesn't need food. It'll do beautifully with food, but it's this sort of wonderful middle ground where you can pair it with a ribeye, but it does beautifully by itself.
Oh no, we have a restaurant that very much known. A lot of its dishes are sort of southern and lean toward like a Cajun and Creole type style, and also lots of butter and kind of richness in their food. And they have this as their Cabernet, and because of the fruit on this, it works. And so people drink a lot of this at that restaurant, and it goes with the food, so people end up loving it and coming back. We've had people say, "Oh, I'm back. I had that wine you introduced me to, and I'm back today because I want that wine again." And that's a great testament to this wine.
The first vintage we completely sold out within the course of just a couple months. We were just like, "Oh, okay, back. Glad you guys liked it. We'll see you in a few more months."
So I really liked it, Carly, but I am I'll admit this. I admit this on every episode. I'm shamelessly biased towards Italian wines, and that's why
I don't blame. Who could blame you?
And I love that you rep the Italian I guess new part of the heritage business, but this was reminiscent of like a Shiraz to me, given how fruity it was. Is have you heard that before?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Have you heard that before? That it's reminiscent of a Shiraz, given how
I
fruity it
have
is.
not, but it makes sense. There is a little bit of Petite Syrah in here, so it does have a bit of jamminess for sure. But that is, I mean, Rhone varietals do pretty well in the Paso area, but it is, I would say Paso in general is a juicy, fruity region, right? And I'm, I have a very French palate, right? Like, and I love Italian wine as well. So I skew more European in my taste profile. But that being said, this is a real crowd pleaser of a Cabernet.
But it's not silky or supple at
Pardon
all.
me?
You wouldn't call it silky or supple.
No.
No.
No,
I
it's
mean,
it's heavy and tannic.
It's not like, I wouldn't call this, I'm trying to think. I'm like, this is,
This is very fruit forward.
Yeah.
It's got kind of bold fruit. The tannins are soft. They're there. They're certainly there. But they're a softer tannin style. And Paso, big, bold, fruit forward style, soft tannins, approachable. That's where you're going with this. It's a very popular style.
Right.
Again, I know we've had this conversation. We had it when we did the Shiraz. Speaking of Shiraz, where we talked about the fact that some people don't like having bitter tannin. They want something that's a smooth experience, and you're not going to get an ending of bitterness. You don't get that on this wine. So this is why this style can be very popular with a lot of people.
Yeah, it's not overly intellectual, right? Like if you are a Bordeaux drinker, right? This might, I don't want to assume, but right, this might not be up your alley, but that's okay. And art, wine is like art. We all have different palates and different chemistry and different styles that we like, but I feel really confident that, say you're having a dinner party and you don't know what crowd you're getting, popping open a bottle of this is a pretty safe bet.
Yeah,
I've done that, and you're right.
Yeah.
We've had people here for dinner, and I'm not sure kind of what they drink, and we've opened this and come to find out, for months later, I was getting thank you notes saying that was the best wine I've ever had, and I'm like, okay, so there are people that, this is absolutely a style that people love.
Yeah. It's very approachable, but it's still cab.
It's still
It's kind of.
all right. Awesome. I just wanted to drill down a little bit more on this for everyone, because I had it and I really enjoyed it. And in the interest of full disclosure, it's still a cab, everyone, and it's a great cab too, a juicy cab from Paso Robles, where I am a big fan of their terroir. I'm not a Napa guy, but I am a Paso Robles guy. So
That's awesome. Yeah, no, Paso is still great. Paso is, what I imagine Napa was like in the 80s, right?
Cool.
People, in terms of, the people tasting out of their homes, people tasting out of their garages. It's, there are exceptions, right? There are some wineries that have a lot of money, but it's just generally a much more like farmer-centric place. So yeah, it's like going back in time a little bit.
Awesome.
All right, shall we do Bravium?
Let's do Bravium with the Hungarian oak.
Yes. So.
To Gene Simmons.
Oh my God,
Simmons and
hilarious.
Bravium.
We're like, wow.
What is up with the Hungarian oak, Carly? I read a lot about wine, and I that was like the first time I was like, wait, Hungarian oak? I've heard of French oak, I've heard of neutral oak, but I've never heard of Hungarian oak.
Yeah, Hungarian oak is, very similar to French oak in a lot of ways. So it's the same. Oh my gosh, is it the same genus? The same. Phylum. No, I'm kidding. There is it is related to French oak, right? There are a lot of similarities. The way that I think of Hungarian oak is it adds what I call baking spice component on the finish, right? Like if I pick up clove, if I pick up nutmeg, cardamom, chances are there's Hungarian oak present. So Derek, who is the owner, farmer, winemaker of Bravium, he is of Cherokee descent. His Cherokee name is Winterhawk, which is why there's a single hawk feather here. Bravium's actually, winemaking is his second career. He was actually in marketing. He worked at Mohegan Sun, actually. And then
Casino.
got the casino, yeah. And got the wine bug, started working at a wine shop, worked his way up, ended up moving to California, going to Davis, and he started this project in his garage. And he now makes, he would find hawk feathers in the vineyards, and it sort of felt to him like a sign that he was on the right path, right? That pursuing wine was the right choice. He now makes this we have something called a winemaker studio in St. Helena, which I like to describe it as a co-working space for our small lot winemaker partners. And it's basically, you get access to ridiculous equipment for a 3,000 case production wine that you normally wouldn't have access to. So, and the other thing is, Derek, pre-COVID times, I don't know if he'll resume this, but he would go to the Zempler Forest in Hungary every year to pick out his barrels. And so barrels can have a terroir. You've heard of the air drying of the staves, but if you're air drying your staves in an asphalt parking lot, it's not really going to pick up a lot of the what terroir is that? So it actually is air drying in the forest next to a creek in Hungary. So it's just an interesting added geeky
fauna,
thing.
yeah, you get all the fauna that's growing there, so it adds something to the.
When native yeast, when we hear the term native yeast, and where is the yeast coming from? It's coming from the barrel. It's coming from the grapes. It's coming from the air in the winery, right? It's all sort of helping to contribute to the terroir of a wine. So this is Anderson Valley. Derek is now the farmer of Wiley Vineyard. So Wiley Vineyard, all of the vineyards that Derek likes to work with for his Pinot Noir program are in what we would call the deep end of Anderson Valley, which is the farthest north you can get and the closest to the ocean.
Cool climate.
So pardon me?
Cool climate.
Very cool climate, right? And I think Anderson Valley is a really underrated Pinot growing region. To me, I get really high tone red fruit, cranberry, pomegranate, and you get a really nice, almost subtle baking spice from the Hungarian.
I do get that.
What else do you get, Dan?
I definitely get the cranberry. That was a good pull.
One more sippy sip for the definitive tasting note.
I know I'm copying you by saying this.
No,
but
it's
I used to
fine.
think pomegranate was pronounced pomegranate, and I definitely taste pomegranate in this as well.
I certainly taste pomegranate. The pomegranate notes are overwhelming.
We just went all French.
I know. Oh, we lost you. I can't hear you, Mike.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Still lost you.
I can't hear him.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So in our first tasting, we tasted a Montepulciano, and I thought I tasted poisonberry. And he corrected me, and he said, "There's no such thing as poisonberry, Mike. It's boysenberry." So
There needs to be some sort of sketch. It would be very niche. It would just be for white people, but people just throwing out fake fruit to seeing if anyone's going to call them on it, right?
That's a great idea.
Noticed, distinct notice, mooseberry for sure. It's definitely got mooseberry, strong mooseberry notes. Just seeing if
no, that was Iron and Sand had mooseberry. You said earlier.
Mooseberry for sure. Very strong notes.
Very
of mooseberry.
strong,
I came
yes.
across very
muscular mooseberry.
muscular mooseberry on the palate.
I got an FU text from Carlo Trinchero. Well, I don't know what that was about, but
Well, it was a good run. Thank you. I had a nice run with Trinchero today. I was asked to no longer represent the family.
no, never. No, I can't imagine that ever happened. So this.
They're stuck with me for life. I've told Carla that. I'm like, you're stuck with me for life. You're going to have to wheel me into retirement.
And so for everyone, I know everyone is fluent in Latin. Bravia means what, Dan?
gift or reward.
Thank you, Carly.
You got it. So obviously, the grapes being a sort of gift or reward that is given to us from the land. And this is a gift or reward given to us by Derek Rolfs. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And I love
Derek.
the color. Just I know this is a Zoom meeting, but I love the
Actually, I love it so much. I want to see if you can actually.
There we
Oh,
go.
hey now. You can see. Can you see me through the Pinot? That's how you know it's Pinot Noir.
Yeah, yes, you can.
yes.
You should be able to read a newspaper through your Pinot Noir, people.
Yes.
People.
Would you say that's garnet or ruby?
It is not 100% Pinot.
Is that more garnet?
It has
ladies?
other things.
Is it
Sorry,
more
what'd you say?
garnet? The color?
Yeah. Oh,
Ruby?
yeah. I
Ruby.
would say ruby. It does skew a little bit. It's hard because these are not fully white
These are not
napkins,
white.
but
Oh, here we go. Wait a minute. Here.
oh, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I would say it skews more ruby.
More ruby.
which is
Okay.
interesting.
Okay. I see
Yeah.
garnet from my camera.
Yeah. I mean, if ruby and
Well,
garnet. have a while,
you're the
you wanna-
brand ambassador, so what you say goes.
Well, it's funny. Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting because, and for the Wiley vineyard, the single vineyard expression, it's very, very red, right? Like, so it's interesting that, yes, it does look a little bit more ruby as you put it against a white piece of paper in this particular lighting. But when you taste it, it's so red. It's garnet in its flavor profile. Is that
Awesome.
fair?
If Garnet had a flavor profile,
If garnet
this
had
would
a
be
flavor
it.
profile, this would be it. Okay, so we all win. here.
Okay, and how's inventory? I know with COVID, there's been a lot of inventory issues with different wineries.
Oh, is there a supply chain problem in the country? What? No.
Story of my life.
No, everything's fine.
No.
No, we have plenty of drivers. We're not running. No one's running out of anything. Chick-fil-A has plenty of chicken. We're all fine. We are good at the winery. We have a decent amount. This isn't a multi. You're not going to see this in grocery stores at all. But that being said, this is something that we are good on.
We are. So for those that are about that case wine life, all of these wines were specially and carefully selected today for those that are about that case wine life, and you can buy them all on where, Dan?
CaseWineLife.com.
And are we giving 10% off for all case purchases today?
Yes.
Hey, you
Every
are. Look at that. You have such a big heart. Do you have a good-looking sister, Carly? She's got such a big heart. Like,
I do. She's married and
Oh,
pregnant. But yeah.
sorry, Dan. Well, she gets 10% off too after the healthy pregnancy.
After the baby's out, after my nephew has arrived
Yes.
earthside,
Yes.
I'll send her your way.
Awesome.
But,
Not
yeah.
really. Send her Mike's way. I'm married. I don't know what he's talking about.
Oh, he's
I was
what's he
gonna
talking
say,
about
he's
for Mike?
spoken for. Oh, he's
I'm married too. Sorry, but I was just trying to. I don't know. I was just trying to spread the love
Spread the-
remotely.
Spread the love.
Remotely, since I wasn't able to.
We're going to start some rumors here. This is going to be like escándalo. This is going to be a telenovela.
Did we not deliver for you today, everyone? I think we broke the internet today, Carly. Or as when this gets uploaded,
I
we
think
will.
I think you weren't expecting a comedy hour.
Hashtag
Yeah.
Cougar juice.
Hashtag Cougar juice.
If you go to Urban Dictionary 5 minutes from now, I'm going to make an intro for Cougar Juice because that's going to be a thing.
Oh, it is.
It's gonna be a thing.
It's
It
for
was
sure a
supposed
thing.
to be a Harvard business case study on this American success story known as the Trinchero family estates. It turned into an education on Cougar juice, anything but Chardonnay, and Hungarian oak.
Absolutely.
Don't forget pomegranate.
Pomegranate. Oh, his audio
Oh,
cut out
your
again.
mic again.
About Carly's wonderful journey into the wine business, and there's no coincidences, everyone, why she ended up in Trinchero family
No, there are
estates. Whether she will still be with the company after this interview, that's a big question mark. But we are optimistic because we want Carly back, because we want to taste everything in her portfolio, especially that $300 bottle of Brunello that she has, that she already sold me on. So I already bought one, So hopefully I get to taste it on camera
Perfect.
with you guys.
That was an easy sell. Easy.
Well, it's delicious. I
It's
did have the
worth it.
opportunity to try. And Carlo Trinchero will be with us on July 15th, so stay tuned for that
Is
episode.
Carly,
too.
are you coming
Yeah.
with Carlo?
Yes, I'm his chaperone, which is a terrifying, thought. But yes, I'm responsible. I'm the responsible adult that will be driving him around during his stay in the Mid-Atlantic.
Okay. We're gonna be,
I am his ride. I am his ride or die. I am his chaperone during his time in Virginia. So, yeah, we're looking
that'll be
forward to it.
awesome.
It'll
We
be
would
fun.
love to do another show with you and Carlo too. Let's have the fourth or third generation winemaker on the show too. Why not? But thank you. I think we're going to break the internet with this episode, and thank you, Holly, too, again for setting this up for us today. This is our
Thank
special
you.
Cinco de Mayo episode, guys. So let's kill it with likes and subscriptions, and everyone turn on notifications. Bozzelli's TV to watch, and CaseWineLife.com to order any of these Trinchero family estate wines.